Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, man. I'm so excited. You know, traveling the country, I hear a lot of people get intimidated about offshore structure fishing, ledge fishing, that they just don't feel comfortable doing it. And I think as an angler, you know, I know early in my career, I was just intimidated by it, you know, and I think we make it too complicated. It's really not. We are going to try to simplify it for you today, just to make it a little easier, give you a real basic approach to find those offshore fish, those ledge fish on your lake.
From the top of the mountain, yeah, we fall our way to the top of the mountain. Yeah, we fall our way to the top of the mountain. Yeah, we ever coming down from the top of the mountain.
Just to simplify things, you know, there's lots of baits out there, but let's keep it simple, guys. You know, a crankbait, a stand-up worm, a swim bait. Those three things, I can go fish offshore ledge fish anywhere across the country. Yes, there's other baits that are in the mix that you want to have in your arsenal, but I can get my job done with these. You know, this is what I would use, you know, if you're getting started, just to simplify things. You know, I've got a crankbait. I'm going to choose a crankbait that's going to dive a little bit deeper than the depth I'm diving. Remember, these fish generally are eating shad, so pick you a shad colored bait. This is the new HD pattern that Berkley's got on some of those dredgers, 12-pound test, 7.6 mag heavy rod. You know, a stand-up worm, it's just a Magnum shaky head. You know, that is a must-have for me. I really prefer this. Now, you could interchange that maybe with a football jig. Maybe you got a lot of confidence in a football jig. They're kind of 2-in-1, 1-in-2, but I like this. I just like the appeal of it. I catch a lot of big fish on this. And then lastly, just a swim bait. You know, whatever your choice is. You know, this is just an HD swimmer that Berkley makes. I got it on a 1/2 ounce head. You know, today I suspect we're going to be fishing, I don't know, probably 10 to 20 feet. So 1/2 ounce will cover all that because I've got that on 12-pound test and a slow gear ratio reel, a 7.3 heavy action rod. But those three baits, I'm going to show you, I can make that work anywhere I go across the country. That's just, remember, you know, one of the things that I live by in my career is that 90% of the bass live in 10% of the lake. So it's more about covering water and putting these baits where the bass are. It's not always about having that perfect bait. It's about having a bait where the bass live. So let's get after it. Let's see if we can catch some. So I'm gonna start idling points. You know, I'm not gonna fish all the way around a point. I wanna idle these points. For the most part, most lakes you can idle over those fish or see them on your side imaging. You know, if you don't have that kind of electronics, that's okay. Then just fish around those points. You know, just try to keep your boat, I'd say in 20, 22 feet of water, depending on the slope of the banks. But just start idling and looking for shad. If you don't, just fish around those. That's okay too. But you know, today I'm gonna probably focus on main lake points. There's a little bit of current going through this lake. I've got water temperature at 81 degrees. You know, the shad spawn's over, summer's upon us. That's what draws these fish out to these offshore structure spots. You know, with that water being 81 degrees, you know, that's the shad spawn's over, you know, fish are pulling offshore, you know, they're gonna get out here, get deeper where that water's cooler. You know, you've got hopefully some current going through your lake that will just set those fish up, and just start fishing as many points throughout the day that you can, and you will eventually run across them. I like to idle them if I can, you know, I feel better by idling. You know, if I can see them, then I know to fish right there. You know, you can't always do that if you don't have, you know, electronics on your boat, but you know, it definitely helps just to cover a lot of water and do a lot of idling.
Decent one, not a big one, but a decent one. Got us a bite. Got us a bite. And a jumper. Oh, buddy, golly. I got my drag pretty tight and he's stripping drag. Oh, get in here. Man, I always like to start out with the crankbait, but man, I've fished 2 different spots this morning and not a bite on the crankbait. So go to the worm. And generally the worm for me is my cleanup bait. It's my final bait, but just the way these fish are setting up, I haven't, you know, the crankbait, they're not biting, and you know, the swim bait, I haven't really got them to bite that yet either. So I'm gonna stick with this worm that's working right now, but it's a 3-part, you know, you need all 3. There's gonna be a time in a day today that those others are gonna come into play too. Might have a little to do with, we got dead slick conditions today. I need to get a new worm on. It keeps getting pulled down just when I cast. I'm gonna show you real quick what I do here. Let me grab one of these out. I just got a fatty bottom hopper, and I'm biting just a little bit of it off, maybe a 1/2 inch to 1 inch, and then I just go through. I'm gonna say 1/4 of an inch on the flat side. Run it up there, turn it around, set that worm on the side. It's just important to me that everything is straight. 1, it looks more natural, and 2, it will not twist your line. Then you can see I've got that thing skin hooked right there, so it's gonna hook them, but it's still gonna be pretty weedless if there's any brush or any rocks down there. The way I like to throw this worm, I like to keep contact on the bottom. I feel like if I'm dragging that worm, the way the hook point is in that it makes it stand up. So, oh, I got a bite, hold on a second. Can't find it, he's got to have it. Yeah, he did. Oh, not a big one, but a fish. He was swimming right at me, I never could find it. Oh wow, I got fishing line everywhere. Huh. Thanks, buddy. So by dragging that on the bottom, by the way this is pulling, you know where that eye is at, when I drag it on the bottom, it has to make it stand up. So, you know, like if the worm's sitting like this, when I go to pull it, it makes the worm come up. So that's why I like to drag it. I don't lift it and hop it a bunch. I try to drag it, keep it on contact with the bottom. The other drawing factor of that is it's banging on the rocks or the bottom, stirring the bottom up, you know, making some noise that I think is also a drawing factor. That last fish catch was a prime example. You know, sometimes it feels like, you know, your bite, you've lost complete contact with your bait. You know, I felt something on my worm, you know, I said, oh, I think I got a bite. Well, then I went to try to find my bait. I couldn't find it. You know, it's just the fish is swimming with it. So that's what made me set the hook. I never did catch up to it. You know, I just went ahead and set the hook just to make sure I got it. But, you know, it's one way one way the bite may feel like, you know, when you're throwing one of these bottom baits. Gosh, dang it, that's a big one. That's a big one. I'm hoping it's a bass. He's got me in something. It's coming up. It's a bass. He's not as big as I thought he was, but he's a good one. He's a good one. Man, it's just a tough day. I normally like getting that crankbait and just going crazy with them. You threw my worm off, buddy. But I've just really had to slow down to get some bites. All right, fun fish. Man, he had me down in that brush down there, and I thought I had a giant at first. Nonetheless, a really good one. Nice fish. Thanks, bud. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, that's so awesome. That's so awesome. I just had to slow down. I don't know what else to say. You know, I've hit quite a few spots and good spots and fish on them. And I cannot get them to react to that crankbait for whatever reason. I just checked the water and they're not letting any water out. This is the first day, I guess, in a long time that they hadn't been letting any water out when I go back and look at the history. And of course, it's right when I get home and I can come out here and film, but it is what it is. So I guess today would be a day that maybe if you guys on your lake, you're approaching it when they've been generating, and then you get to the weekend and they quit generating. That's what's happened to me today. got one. We got one, we got one. Oh, come here, buddy, come here. Not a giant, but a fish. You threw my worm. You threw my worm. I think there is a bunch of them down there. I really want to pick up my crankbait, but it's deeper than that crankbait will go, so I need to get a deeper diving one out. Man, that worm didn't even hit the bottom. Let's see. I just like throwing a crankbait. Don't get me wrong, I have nothing against a worm. I feel like you catch your biggest fish always on a crankbait. Let's see. Right at me. Bigger than I thought he looked on the screen. Just a fish, just a fish. One thing you'll notice that I do every time, and he's fat, is when I idle over a group of them, I mean, as soon as I'm like going, I shut the motor off, I run up front, grab my rod, and I throw directly behind the boat. I want to come right over that pass that I idled over. I just, you know, so many times when you're offshore fishing and I see other people doing it, you know, they may idle around, but they don't actually make the cast where those fish are actually at. I just think it's really critical. And just one thing that'll help you, don't be ashamed to throw a buoy over the side. You know, like when you see them, toss a buoy out there. It'll really help you until you get really comfortable with your electronics, your trails, your waypoints. You know, throw you a buoy over there if you need to. But I like to throw, like when I idle over them, I just idled over a group of them right there. I threw directly in the wake of my boat. I shut it off. This was the direction I was facing when I idled over them. I didn't change anything. Maybe a better one, a little bit better. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Man, I switched up colors. I just had to switch up colors. I had to do something different. I just was not getting very many bites. That's a better fish. All right. Little cool tattoo on his tail. That's a cool fish. Thanks, bud. Let's make another cast right there again. You know, probably the greatest thing about, you know, the generation schedule or the current, you know, it doesn't really allow those fish, I think, to suspend up off the bottom. They get on the bottom and they just wait for those big balls of shad to, you know, just be washed down the lake to them. And when that's happening, you know, it's one of the best times to fish. You know, I'm sitting here making excuses for my day. My day's nowhere near over, but they've been running current for 3-4 weeks, and today's the first day they hadn't. So it's going to take a little bit for these fish to adjust to that. You know, because a lot of lakes like TVA, you know, it's on off every day. You know, they're used to it being on and off. This lake here, it's been on and never shut off. You know, just the same amount 24/7 because they've been trying to drop the lake. Feel like we figured them out. We got back in them. Just a matter of covering water. You know, I cover a lot of water when I'm fishing offshore. I don't try to make them bite. I give them 10 minutes at the most. You know, if you can, the only caveat to that is if you've got a lot of boats on the water, then you've got to stay there because every spot you go to, there's another one. Oh, I missed him. Come here. Every spot you go to is going to have a boat on it. So, you know, fortunately today there's boats on the water, but it's not horrible. There's a bite. 3 casts in a row. You got a hold of that thing? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Gosh, that's fun. I like setting the hook. I don't know what it is about it. It's kind of like hitting a baseball, I guess. I don't know. It's fun setting the hook. It is fun setting the hook. Fun, fun. He's not as big as that last one, but it's a good one. It's a fish. It's stretching my 12-pound Bass Pro fluorocarbon. It is stretching it out. Thanks, bud. All right, all right, all right, all right. Man, it's been weird today. You know, it's kind of one of those days. You guys have to determine on your lake. There is times that bringing that crankbait down through there will bust that school up. Well, all day today I've idled over, you know, a school of fish and run that crankbait through there, and I hadn't got any bites, and then I hardly don't catch anything at all. I pulled up on these and I said, I'm not gonna run it through there this time. And I've had 4 bites basically in 4 casts, and I didn't run that crankbait through there. So there are times, you know, and that's just something you're gonna have to determine. You know, it's a Monday morning, so there's tons of pressure on this lake, you know, yesterday and Saturday, so that could be part of it. They're not running any water, could be part of it. You know, there's lots of reasons, and it's really, really calm. But we made a little adjustment. We got some bites. There's a bunch of them, guys. It's one thing about it, you know, when you catch 3 or 4, you bring them all to the boat. I just looked underneath my down scan in the back, and I've got mine set up, you know, to where I can see the depth in the back and the front. There's like 10 fish right there. I'm pulling forward right now. I'm hoping to catch one of them. Yep, there's a bite. Yeah, and he hit it like there's a bunch of them there because he swam right at me. Come here, buddy. Oh, you tore my worm up, you little turkey. Dadgummit. One thing to keep in mind, I think it's important in fishing offshore fish like this. I don't like to throw way past them and then my line come through them first. You know, my first few casts, if I can make it happen, I want my bait to drop right where I think those fish are. You know, through my career, I've learned that I think sometimes on some of these pressured lakes, these fish feel the presence of that line, you know, dropping down through them before the bait ever gets to them. And that can spook them. I know I'm really reaching there, but I truly believe that. And I can't tell you how many times I catch them on the initial drop. And you know, that's, you know, a couple things. That keeps me back off those fish. It gives me a lot of distance from them, but they're also not feeling the presence of that line going down through them before the bait ever gets to them. Golly. There's some fish up there. They may not be gargantuan giants, but they're stretching my string. Hey, buddy, don't tear my worm up. Hey, look at that, the worm come out. All right, thanks, man. One thing about fishing a stand-up worm, when you set the hook, don't stop reeling. You know, it's a bait that you can never give those fish any slack. So when you notice, when I set the hook, man, I am reeling the whole time too. I just want to pull as hard as I can to get that hook buried in those fish. You know, it's a long cast, it's a long ways from you. And if you'll reel the whole time you're setting the hook, it just increases your odds tenfold. Trust me on that. Man, he don't feel very big. He was mean though, he ate it. Sand bass, that's why he felt so weird. On a worm. You got to be good to catch one of these on one of those. I think that tells me it's probably time to leave. Yeah. Let's go find us some big ones. We got the old swim bait out to work. Yes. First cast with it. Got me one. Just another bait you got to have in your arsenal. Some form of a swim bait. You know, it's when they're not going to chase that crankbait, like on a day like today, you've got to have something subtle that'll come through there. And that's really subtle. First cast, I like it.
you know, in my opinion, when you're fishing these offshore fish, it's going through your baits, you know. And today I've done 3 baits. Now I've got different crankbaits on for some different depths, but those 3 baits, generally speaking, I can get them to bite one of those 3 baits, and it's just a matter of rotating through them. You know, we've caught them basically on lots of them on the worm, a few on the crankbait, and now we got the swim bait going. So good deal. But it's crazy. I threw that worm through there 4, 5, 6 times, never had a bite. First cast with that swim bait. A few key points when you're throwing this swim bait, you know, or how I throw it. Let me just say there's other ways to do it, but you know, like on a day like today with things really slow, I throw it out there, I let it go all the way to the bottom, and then I'm gonna reel that thing about 10 feet and then stop it. And I'm gonna watch my line. And 9 times out of 10, that bite is always gonna happen when you stop it and it starts to fall back to the bottom. I don't know why, it's just that's when it happens, is on that pause. So, you know, by pausing it, yes, it gets that bite, but it also helps keep it close to the bottom too. There's a bite right there, you turkey. Oh, gosh, doggy. That's a big one. Golly, finally, that's a good one. Oh, I thought it was bigger than that. I don't know why. I set that hook, he was just right on the downhill side. Come here, buddy. It's a nice one. It's a nice one. Man, just with no current today, I can't get those bigger bites. I need to make an adjustment, and I'm not making it. Still a nice one. Thanks, man. Hey, when I idled over those fish, you know, I thought, man, those look big. I still think there's big ones up there. I caught a little one. Hey, one of the biggest things in your offshore fishing that I can tell you that I think will help you is to figure out your casting distance. You know, like I put a waypoint on that buoy just to get a reference. I'm roughly 120 feet from that buoy. So I've got a waypoint on it. I leave my cursor on it, I back the boat up, and I'm 120 feet. That's a fairly easy cast with a worm, football jig, crankbait. But if I was trying to hit the bottom of that at 120 feet with a crankbait and 20 feet of water, or 18 feet of water, I'm not gonna hit the bottom. So a couple numbers that I want you to remember. If you need to, if you're fishing a worm or a football jig, Carolina rig, you know, 120 feet's a good distance to be from where those fish are. You know, 120 to 130, depending on how much wind you got, how far you can cast. Now, if I need to hit, I'm pretending that buoy's on top of a rock pile. If I need to hit that rock pile underneath that buoy with my crankbait, I need to be 60 feet away from that rock pile. So, and I do all this with the cursor on my depth finder. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Now, with my unit zoomed all the way in, I can't zoom it in anymore. If I put, you know, if I zoom it out 10 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That brings that buoy or my rock pile, or in this instance, if we're talking about fish, right to the top of my screen. So I know that I'm within distance of that. When something gets into my screen, I'm within football jig, casting worm distance. So if I put my cursor right there, you can see I am 113 feet from it right now. So that's a good distance that I can be. And that's gonna change, you know, the satellites change. These are rough numbers, you know, now it's 115, 114. So I like to hit that negative 10 times. I zoom it out 10 times, that gets right to the 50 feet mark. And then I know when something enters this screen, it's within reach of my casting of my worm. Now, I need to get a little bit closer to it if I want to hit the bottom with a deep diving crankbait right there, you know, because I have to get past it, give it time for that bait to get down to the bottom, and then, you know, achieve the depth. So I know I need to be up there. So a lot of times, I'm always putting my cursor on what I'm trying to fish, because then I know the exact distance. That's 114 feet from my boat right now. I just know that, and I know that I can cast 120 feet easy. I don't have to work at it. You know, I can really cast 130, 140 feet, but you've got to figure that out for yourself. Put the cursor on whatever it is. If you're fishing a pond or something like that, walk it off, but know how far you can cast. And then also, know your directions. I've got my unit north up, so it never changes on me. I always know when this cursor's like this, that line is straight north. That is due north right there. That's due west, that's due east, that's due south. So I always know where I need to throw to get to that spot. That's a problem I think a lot of people have is, they try to fish offshore, they mark some fish, but they don't ever get the cast right on it. When you're out here in open water, you don't have something specific to throw at, it can be hard to understand what you're looking at on the screen. So I hope with these tips that I'm telling you, determine how far you can cast, keep your cursor on your waypoint, keep your unit in north up, and all that together, it should help you make that cast on that structure each time that you need to do it. Oh, look at that, look right there. Bass was trying to eat that shad. That was so cool. Man, what a day. I caught a bazillion fish. I didn't catch a lot of big ones, but I caught a lot of fish, guys. I hope some of that stuff I passed on to you can help you. I got a lot more rods out but I only got 3 baits out. A swim bait, a worm, a crankbait. Those are great baits just to get yourself started ledge fishing. Really dial in how far you can cast and how long it takes you to get your bait to that depth. Use those tips that I gave you, on that screen to figure that stuff out. So, hey, real quick before we end, we got to do our power stop breakdown. So the worm, just a 7.3 heavy action rod, high speed reel, 14-pound Bass Pro fluorocarbon, 3/8 ounce stand-up Berkeley Fusion head. Ended up catching those fish on a hit worm right there. Just a black, blue, or plum hit worm. I fished a crankbait a bunch, caught some fish on it earlier today, but for the most part, it didn't work today. We didn't have any current, the water got dirty, but 12-pound test, a 20.5 Berkeley dredger, 6/8-to-1 reel, a 7.6 mag heavy rod. That's a must. Those are 2 of the 3. And then the third one is this bait right here. We just had a swim bait, really simple, just a 1/2 ounce Berkeley Fusion swim bait head. I ended up catching them on that right there, just a power swimmer, a 3/8 sight flash power swimmer, worked really well. I've got this on 12-pound test, a 7.3 heavy action rod, high speed reel. So that was my setup today. Guys, I hope this episode helps you guys a bunch. Tune in next week, we'll be doing it all again. Thanks a lot for following along.